Ha-Jun woke up screaming. 3 years old, nightmare-stricken, clutching the stuffed bear his mother gave him before she shattered. When he saw his father in the doorway, Kwon Ji-tae, Seoul's most untouchable crime lord, he didn't cry out for help. He just lifted both hands, small, brown, open. "Hold me." And Ji-tae, the man who'd spent 15 years making sure no one could ever reach him, heard his dead father's voice. "If you love him, you'll destroy him." Ha-Jun's hands didn't drop, and the most dangerous man in Korea realized his son was braver than he'd ever been. This is the story of what happened next. A story about a father who didn't know how to love, a teacher who uncovered his darkest secret, a mother fighting her way back from the edge, and a little boy who refused to stop reaching. If you want to see how far Kwon Ji-tae will go, and whether a man built from stone can learn to feel, subscribe now and join our members-only community. You'll get early access to new chapters before anyone else, exclusive bonus scenes exploring Ji-tae's brutal childhood and Dorcas's untold story, behind-the-scenes breakdowns of each chapter's themes and symbolism, live Q&A sessions where we discuss the choices these characters make. Hit subscribe, become a member, and let's see if a monster can become a father. Let's set the screen properly. Kwon Ji-tae's morning began the way every morning began, with silence. He woke at 5:47 a.m., 3 minutes before his alarm. He showered in water set to exactly 38 degrees Celsius. He dressed in a charcoal suit tailored to hide the scars on his ribs, reminders of lessons his father had taught with broken bottles and closed fists. By 6:30, he was in his office, reviewing overnight reports. A shipment delayed at Busan port, a politician requiring persuasion, a loan that needed collecting. Ji-tae made notes in precise handwriting, his face expressionless. Problems were just variables. Variables could be managed. At 7:15, his phone buzzed. The caretaker. "Mr. Kwon, Ha-Jun is awake. Shall I prepare his breakfast?" "Yes, I'll be down shortly." He wouldn't be down shortly. They both knew this, but the protocol mattered. Ji-tae closed the file in front of him and allowed himself 30 seconds to look at the photograph on his desk. It was the only personal item in the room. Ha-Jun, at 18 months, laughing, held in Dorcas's arms. Her smile was wide and real. She'd been whole then, before she understood what Ji-tae's world actually was, before she tried to leave, before he made it clear she couldn't, before she shattered. He returned the photo to its exact position, 3 inches from the desk's edge, perfectly aligned, and stood. Downstairs, Ha-Jun sat at the kitchen table, small legs swinging, not quite reaching the floor. He was pushing rice around his bowl with a spoon, humming something tuneless. When Ji-tae entered, the boy looked up. "Appa." "Ha-Jun." The caretaker bowed slightly. "He ate well yesterday, no issues. The fever from last week is completely gone." Ji-tae nodded. He poured himself coffee, black, no sugar. His father used to say sugar was for weak men who couldn't handle bitterness. Ha-Jun was watching him. Those eyes, Dorcas's eyes, dark and deep and entirely too perceptive for a 3-year-old. "Appa, are you going to work?" "Yes." "Will you come back?" The question landed wrong. Of course he'd come back. He always comes back. But the way Ha-Jun asked, careful, tentative, like he wasn't entirely sure, made something tighten in Ji-tae's chest. "I always come back." Ha-Jun nodded, accepting this. He returned to his rice. Ji-tae finished his coffee, rinsed the cup, set it in the sink. He checked his watch. 7:43. He had a meeting at 8:30. He should leave. He stood behind Ha-Jun's chair for a moment, looking down at the boy's curly hair, the small shoulders, the way he held his spoon in a tight fist like he was afraid it might escape. Jitae's hand lifted, hovering over Ha-jun's head, just a touch, just once. His father's voice cut through. You touch him, you make him soft. Soft boys die. Jitae's hand dropped to his side. He walked to the door, grabbed his briefcase, and left without another word. Behind him, Ha-jun watched his father disappear. Then he went back to his rice, humming again, alone at the big table in the big house, waiting.
The call came at 11:47 p.m. Jitae was in his home office, reviewing acquisition documents for a waterfront property that would be useful for shipments the Port Authority didn't need to know about. His desk lamp cast the only light in the room. Outside, Seoul glittered through floor-to-ceiling windows, a city that bent to men like him. His phone buzzed. The caretaker's name appeared on the screen. She never called this late. Mr. Kwon, I apologize for disturbing you. Ha-jun had a nightmare. He's very upset and asking for you. Jitae's pen stopped moving. Handle it. I've tried, sir. He won't settle. He keeps saying he wants his appa. Jitae set the pen down carefully. The caretaker had been with them for 2 years. She was efficient, experienced, unflappable. If she was calling, it meant she'd exhausted her options. I'll be there. He hung up before she could respond. He told himself he was just checking. That was reasonable. That was what a responsible parent did. He climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, where Ha-jun's room was, his footsteps silent on imported marble that cost more than most people earned in a year. The door was cracked open. Soft light spilled into the hallway from a nightlight shaped like a bear, the same bear Ha-jun clutched in his arms now. The boy was sitting up in bed, his face wet with tears, his breathing hitched and uneven. When he saw Jitae in the doorway, he didn't call out, didn't wail. He just lifted both hands. Small brown fingers stretched toward his father, open palms, no hesitation, pure, unconditional trust. Jitae stood frozen. He hadn't been reached for like this since he couldn't remember when, maybe never. His mother had left when he was 9. His father had taught him that needing someone was the fastest way to get hurt. Dorcas had reached for him once, in the beginning, before she learned what he was, before he took that reaching away from her piece by piece, until there was nothing left but broken glass and psychiatric wards. And now his son, tear-stained, small, innocent, was asking for the one thing Jitae had spent 38 years learning not to give. If you touch him, you'll make him weak, his father's voice whispered. Weak like you were, weak like I had to beat out of you. But Ha-jun's hands stayed up, waiting. Jitae's throat felt tight. His feet moved before his mind gave permission. He crossed the room and sat on the edge of the small bed, the mattress dipping under his weight. Ha-jun didn't grab at him, didn't demand. He just leaned forward, slowly, and pressed his face against Jitae's chest. The boy's breathing was fast and shallow. His small hand found Jitae's tie and gripped it loosely, like an anchor. Bad dream, Ha-jun whispered against the fabric of Jitae's shirt. Jitae sat completely still. He didn't put his arms around Ha-jun. He didn't stroke his hair or whisper comfort. He didn't know how. But he didn't leave. They stayed like that, father and son, stone and softness, while the city lights blinked outside and Ha-jun's tears dampened Jitae's expensive suit. 20 minutes passed. Ha-jun's breathing evened out. Sleep pulled him under. Jitae remained frozen, afraid that if he moved, something irreversible would break.
Jitae didn't sleep that night. After Ha-jun finally settled, he'd returned to his office and sat in the dark, staring at nothing. His shirt still held the damp imprint of his son's tears. He should have changed. He didn't. At 4:30 a.m., he gave up pretending and opened his laptop. The routine security briefing sat in his encrypted inbox. He skimmed through it with mechanical efficiency: shipment manifests, personnel reports, financial transfers that existed in ledgers no auditor would ever see. Then a name stopped him cold. Park Ji-won. New hire, Sunshine Academy, assigned classroom, pre-K 3. Ha-jun's school, Ha-jun's teacher. Jitae pulled the full background file. The photograph loaded first. A woman in her early 30s, kind face, practical clothes, the type of person who chose teaching because she actually cared. He scanned the details: education history, employment record, clean. Then he reached the family section. Father, Park Sung-ho, deceased, former prosecutor, Seoul Central District. Jitae's hands stopped moving. He knew that name. He knew it the way you know the shape of scars you put on someone else. 10 years ago, Prosecutor Park had been building a case, meticulous, relentless, getting too close to operations Jitae had buried under 6 layers of corporate structures. The indictments were 48 hours away when Jitae's father, still alive then, still sharp despite the liver rot, had given him the choice. You know what needs to happen. Destroy the case or destroy the man. Your call. Jitae had chosen efficiency. He hadn't touched Park physically, hadn't needed to. Financial records appeared showing bribes Park never took. Media leaks painted him as the kind of corrupt official he'd spent his career fighting. Bank accounts were frozen. His reputation disintegrated in 72 hours. Park Sung-ho had a heart attack 6 months later. The obituary said he was 56. Jitae had read it over breakfast and felt nothing. He'd been 28 then, hungry, certain that mercy was just weakness wearing a mask. His father had clapped him on the shoulder, the closest thing to affection the old man ever showed, and said, "Now you're learning." And now Park Ji-won's daughter was teaching his son to finger paint. Jitae leaned back in his chair. The smart play was obvious. A quiet reassignment, a better offer at another school, she'd never know why. Ha-jun would get a new teacher. Problem managed before it became a problem. He reached for his phone. His finger hovered over his head of security's contact. He thought about Ha-jun's hands reaching up in the dark, small brown fingers that didn't know his father had destroyed people, that didn't know Jitae had learned cruelty from a master and perfected it into an art form. Ha-jun just knew that sometimes when the nightmares came, his appa would sit with him. Jitae set the phone down. He pulled up Park Ji-won's file again and studied her face. She had her father's eyes, serious, searching. She had no idea who Ha-jun's father was. The boy was enrolled under his mother's maiden name, Ha-jun Williams, a protection Jitae insisted on when Dorcas was still functional enough to have opinions. Jitae could let this go, let her teach, let the past stay buried. Or he could make one call and erase the risk entirely. His father's voice. Sentiment gets you killed. Remove the variable. Jitae closed the laptop. He didn't make the call. Instead, he sat in the dark and wondered when he'd started making decisions he couldn't explain. Park Ji-won loved her job for one simple reason. Children told the truth. Adults performed. They curated. They said what they thought you wanted to hear. But 3-year-olds? They just were. Messy and honest and entirely themselves. Ha-jun Williams was different, though. She'd noticed it the first week. While the other children shouted and laughed and crashed into each other like beautiful chaos, Ha-jun watched. He played carefully, methodically. He built block towers in perfect symmetry and looked disappointed when another child knocked them down, but he never cried, never complained. He just started building again. "Ha-jun," she'd asked one afternoon during free play, kneeling beside him, "do you want to play with the others?" He'd looked at the group of children racing trucks across the carpet and shook his head. "They're loud." "That's okay. You can be quiet if you want." He'd studied her face like he was deciding whether to believe her. Then he'd gone back to his blocks. Now, 3 weeks into the semester, she was running the Family Project. Simple, sweet, designed to help the children talk about the people they loved. Draw your family. Tell us what they do. Most of the drawings were exactly what she expected. Stick figures with enormous smiles, houses with crooked chimneys, dogs larger than the people. The children presented them with pride, shouting over each other about their moms and dads and siblings and pets. Ha-jun's drawing was different. He'd drawn one figure, tall, dark suit, no smile. The man stood alone in the center of the page, hands at his sides, nothing else around him. No house, no sun, just the figure and white space. Jiwon knelt beside his desk. Is this your family, Hajun? He nodded. Just one person? My appa. What about your amma? Hajun's small hand stilled on the crayon. She's away, getting better. Jiwon's chest tightened. I'm sorry, sweetheart. That must be hard. He shrugged, too casual for a 3-year-old. It's okay. Appa says she'll come back. I'm sure she will. Jiwon pointed to the figure. Your appa looks very serious. What does he do? Hajun thought about this carefully. He makes people listen. She smiled. That's good. Listening is important. Uncle Minjae says appa makes people scared. The smile faded. Jiwon kept her voice light. Why would he say that? Hajun picked up a black crayon and added something to the drawing, a shadow behind the man, dark and formless. Because appa is important, important people are scary. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was explaining that the sky was blue. Jiwon looked at the drawing again, the lone figure, the darkness, the careful, precise way Hajun had drawn his father's face, no expression at all. Hajun, does your appa scare you? The boy looked up at her, those big dark eyes so serious. No, he just doesn't stay. That afternoon, during pickup, Ji-won watched as a black car pulled up. A man stepped out, tall, expensive suit, movements controlled and exact. He walked to the door like he owned the air around him. Hajun's face lit up. Appa! The man's expression didn't change, but he held out his hand. Hajun took it immediately, chattering about his day. The man listened without speaking, nodded once, and guided the boy toward the car. Ji-won watched them go. Something about the man bothered her. Not dangerous exactly, just familiar, like she'd seen that face before. That night, she pulled out the box from under her bed, the one she hadn't opened in 2 years. Inside, her father's case files, newspaper clippings, photos of men in suits standing outside courthouses. She didn't know what she was looking for, but she started searching anyway. The call came on a Tuesday. Ji-tae was in a meeting when his phone buzzed. Dr. Shin's name appeared on the screen. He let it go to voicemail. The doctor had called 3 times in the past 2 weeks. Ji-tae knew what she wanted. He listened to the message in his car. Mr. Kwan, this is Dr. Shin. Dorcas has made remarkable progress. She's stable, coherent, and asking about Hajun daily. I believe she's ready for supervised visitation. Please call me back to discuss scheduling. This is important. Ji-tae deleted the message. He sat in the parking garage beneath his office building, engine off, hands still on the wheel. Dorcas was getting better. That should be good news. That's what he'd paid for, after all. The best psychiatric care money could buy. The kind of place where they didn't ask questions about how a brilliant lawyer ended up catatonic on a bathroom floor surrounded by broken mirror glass. But if Dorcas came back into Hajun's life, questions would follow. Questions Ji-tae didn't know how to answer. Why did Ima leave? Why did she get sick? Was it because of me? He drove home in silence. Hajun was already in bed when Ji-tae arrived, but the light under his door said he was still awake. Ji-tae should have gone to his office. He had contracts to review, calls to return. Instead, he found himself walking down the hall. He knocked softly. Hajun? Appa? The boy's voice surprised and hopeful. Ji-tae opened the door. Hajun was sitting up in bed, his stuffed bear tucked under one arm. He smiled, the rare, full smile that made him look exactly like Dorcas before Ji-tae had broken her. I thought you were working, Hajun said. I was. Ji-tae sat on the edge of the bed, the same spot he'd occupied during the nightmare 3 nights ago. Can't sleep? Hajun shook his head, thinking. About what? The boy was quiet for a moment, his small fingers picking at the bear's worn ear. Then, Appa, where is Amma? Ji-tae's chest tightened. You know where she is. She's getting better. But when will she come back? I don't know. Ha-jun's voice got smaller. Is it because of me? The question hit like a fist. No, it's not because of you. Then why? Ji-tae didn't have an answer that a 3-year-old could understand. He barely had one that made sense to himself. How do you explain to your son that his mother tried to leave, that you made it impossible, that she stayed until the weight of it crushed her? Sometimes, Ji-tae said carefully, people get sick in ways that aren't easy to see. It's not your fault. It's not anyone's fault. It was a lie. They both knew whose fault it was. Ha-jun looked down at his bear. Uncle Min-jae said Ama was sad, really, really sad, before she went away. Uncle Min-jae talks too much. Was she sad because she didn't want to be my Ama? No. Ji-tae's voice came out harder than he intended. She loves you. She has always loved you. Ha-jun looked up, those dark eyes searching his father's face. Do you love her? The question was impossible. Ji-tae had loved Dorcas once, or thought he did, but love in his world was a weapon, and he'd used it like one. He'd kept her close because he wanted her. He'd kept Ha-jun from her because he could. That wasn't love. That was possession. It's complicated, Ji-tae said finally. Ha-jun nodded like that made sense, even though it couldn't. Then he held out the bear. He helps when things are hard. Ji-tae took the bear. It was threadbare and soft, one eye missing. Dorcas had given it to Ha-jun the day he was born. They sat in silence, father, son, and a worn-out bear that remembered better days. Finally, Ha-jun yawned. Appa? Yes. Will you stay until I fall asleep? Ji-tae should say no. He had work, he had calls, he had an empire that required his attention. Yes, he said. I'll stay. Ji-tae called Dr. Shin the next morning. Schedule the visit. There was a pause on the other end. The doctor had clearly expected more resistance. That's excellent, Mr. Kwan. When would work for you? This Saturday. Supervised. 1 hour. Of course. I'll make the arrangements. Will you be accompanying Ha-jun? Ji-tae looked out his office window at the Seoul skyline. He'd built this view, bought it with decisions most people couldn't stomach. Yes. Good. I think that's wise. Dorcas has been asking about you as well. Ji-tae hung up without responding to that. He sat at his desk for a long moment, then pulled up the security feed from Ha-jun's school. It was a habit he'd developed, checking in during the day, watching his son from a distance. Safer that way, less complicated. On the screen, Ha-jun sat at a small table with other children, working on some kind of craft project. Ms. Park knelt beside him, pointing at something, smiling. Ha-jun nodded seriously, then added more glue to whatever he was making. Ji-tae zoomed in on Ms. Park's face. She had the same careful way of moving that her father had, deliberate, thoughtful. Prosecutor Park had been like that in court, precise, never wasted a word. Ji-tae's phone buzzed, his head of security. Park Ji-won ran multiple searches last night. Your name, your business entities. She's connecting dots. Ji-tae typed back. I know. Do you want me to handle it? His finger hovered over the keyboard. Handle it. Such a clean phrase. It meant so many things in his world. A reassignment, a quiet threat, a problem that simply disappeared. He thought about Ha-jun's drawing, the lone figure standing in white space. Appa doesn't stay. He thought about the way his son's face had lit up yesterday when Ji-tae had actually picked him up from school instead of sending the driver. Like such a small thing, being present, was a miracle. He thought about his father's voice. Remove the variable before it becomes a problem. Ji-tae piped. Do nothing. Sir? You heard me. No action on Park Ji-won. Let her teach. She's asking dangerous questions. Then let her ask. He put the phone down and returned his attention to the screen. Ms. Park was helping Ha-jun clean glue off his fingers now, saying something that made the boy smile. A real smile, the kind Ji-tae rarely saw at home. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Kwon, your 10 a.m. is here. Ji-tae closed the security feed. Send them in. The meeting was about a waterfront development that would displace 200 families. The developer wanted Ji-tae's backing. The presentation was slick, professional, full of numbers that made the human cost disappear into percentages and projections. 5 years ago, Ji-tae would have signed without hesitation. Good investment, strategic location, sentiment was irrelevant. But he kept thinking about Ha-jun's question, is it because of me? He kept thinking about Dorcas in that facility, asking about their son. He kept thinking about Ms. Park searching for answers about a father who died disgraced, never knowing that the man who destroyed him was now driving his daughter's student home from school. Mr. Kwon? The developer was waiting. Do we have your support? Ji-tae looked at the presentation. The numbers were good. The return was substantial. It was exactly the kind of deal his father would have made without blinking. No, Ji-tae said. The room went silent. I'm sorry? I said no. We're done here. The developer started to argue, but Ji-tae's assistant was already ushering them out. The door closed, and Ji-tae sat alone in the conference room, staring at the empty chairs. His phone buzzed again. Dr. Shin. Saturday at 2 p.m. Dorcas is looking forward to seeing Ha-jun, and you. Ji-tae didn't respond. He just sat there, wondering when he'd started making choices that didn't make sense, wondering if that was progress or just a different kind of destruction. Saturday arrived too quickly. Ji-tae dressed Ha-jun carefully that morning, a button-up shirt the boy hated because it was scratchy, but Dorcas had bought it before everything fell apart. Ha-jun kept tugging at the collar during the drive to the facility. Why do I have to wear this, Appa? Your Amma likes it. Will she remember me? The question was so small, so afraid, that Ji-tae's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Yes, she remembers you. Are you sure? No, Ji-tae wasn't sure of anything anymore. Yes. The facility looked like a luxury hotel, all glass and clean lines and carefully maintained gardens. Nothing about it said psychiatric ward. That was the point. Wealthy people didn't send their broken family members to places that looked like hospitals. Dr. Shin met them in the lobby. Mr. Kwon, Ha-jun? She smiled at the boy. Your Amma is very excited to see you. Ha-jun pressed closer to Ji-tae's leg. They were led to a private room, comfortable furniture, soft lighting, a small table with crayons and paper already set out. Dorcas was sitting in a chair by the window, hands folded in her lap. She'd lost weight. Her hair was natural now, pulled back in a simple style. No makeup, no jewelry. She looked fragile, that was the word, like she might break if touched too hard. When she saw Ha-jun, her eyes filled with tears. Hi, baby. Ha-jun didn't move. He stared at her like he was trying to reconcile the woman in front of him with whatever fractured memories he still carried. Dorcas knelt down slowly, staying where she was, not reaching for him. I know it's been a long time. I'm sorry. Ha-jun looked up at Ji-tae, asking permission, asking if this was safe. Ji-tae nodded. Ha-jun took one step, then another. Then he ran, crashing into Dorcas's arms with the full weight of a 3-year-old who'd been waiting 18 months for this moment. Dorcas caught him and held on, her face buried in his curls, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Ji-tae stood near the door. Dr. Shin had stepped out to give them privacy. He should leave too. This wasn't his moment, but he couldn't make himself move. After a long moment, Dorcas looked up. Her eyes met Ji-tae's across the room, dark, exhausted, and full of something he couldn't name. Not anger, not love, something heavier. Grief, maybe. for what they'd been, for what he'd destroyed. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for bringing him." Jite nodded. He didn't trust his voice. Dorcas turned her attention back to Hajun, running her hands over his face like she was memorizing him. "You cut so big. Look at you." "I'm 3 now," Hajun said proudly. "I know, I missed your birthday. I'm so sorry." "It's okay. Appa got me a truck." Dorcas glanced at Jite again. Something flickered in her expression. Surprise, maybe, that he'd remembered, that he'd tried. They sat together on the floor. Hajun pulled out the drawing he brought, the one with 3 people holding hands. He showed it to Dorcas. "This is you, and Appa, and me." Dorcas's hand trembled as she took the paper. "It's beautiful, baby. When can you come home?" The question hung in the air. Dorcas looked at Jite. He looked away. "I don't know yet," she said carefully, "but I'm getting better, and I'm going to keep getting better, okay? For you. Do you promise?" "I promise." Hajun seemed to accept this. He climbed into her lap and started telling her about school, about his teacher, about the new words he'd learned. Dorcas listened like every word was precious, her arms wrapped around him, her chin resting on top of his head. Jite watched from the doorway. The mother and son he'd tried to keep in separate boxes, now together, now whole in a way he'd never allowed. And he understood with brutal clarity that he was the only broken thing in this room. The hour ended too soon. Hajun cried when they had to leave. Dorcas held him close and whispered promises Jite wasn't sure she could keep. As they walked to the car, Hajun's small hand found Jite's hand. "Appa?" "Yes?" "Can we come back?" Jite looked down at his son's tear-streaked face. "Yes, we can come back." The meeting request came through the school's parent portal on Monday morning. Ms. Park would like to schedule a conference regarding Hajun's development. Please select a time that works for you. Jite stared at the notification. Standard procedure. Parents had these meetings all the time. It meant nothing. Except Ms. Park had been searching his name, connecting dots, getting close to questions that had answers he'd buried a decade ago. He could decline, send a representative. Hajun's caretaker could handle it. He clicked accept and selected Tuesday at 4 p.m. The next afternoon, Jite arrived at Sunshine Academy 15 minutes early. The hallway walls were covered in children's artwork, handprints turned into flowers, crooked alphabet letters, paintings that were mostly enthusiasm and very little technique. He found Hajun's contribution easily. A house, a tree, 3 figures holding hands, just like the drawing he'd given Dorcas, the same family that didn't exist outside his son's hopeful imagination. "Mr. Kwan?" Jite turned. Ms. Park stood in the doorway of her classroom, professional smile in place. "Thank you for coming. Please, come in." The classroom was smaller than it looked in the security feeds. Child-sized furniture, bookshelves at knee height, the faint smell of crayons and glue. Ms. Park gestured to 2 adult-sized chairs set up near her desk, concessions for parent meetings. They sat. "Hajun is doing wonderfully. He's bright, observant, very thoughtful for his age. He plays well independently, though I'd like to see him engage more with the other children. He's always been reserved. I've noticed." She paused, folding her hands in her lap. "He talks about you quite a bit." "Does he?" "He draws you often, always the same way, standing alone, very serious. He says you're important, that you make people listen." Her eyes searched his face. "He also says you don't stay." Jite's expression didn't change. "I'm often working." "Of course." Ms. Park's voice remained gentle, but there was something underneath it, something sharp. "May I ask, Hajun mentioned his mother is away, getting better. Is she ill?" "That's personal." "I understand. I only ask because Hajun seems to carry some confusion about it. He asked me last week if people leave because they don't love you anymore. The words landed like a blade between the ribs. I see, Jite said evenly. Ms. Park leaned forward slightly. Mr. Kwan, forgive me if this is too forward, but I've been doing some thinking. Your name came up in some research I was doing about my father. There it was. Jite remained perfectly still. Your father. Park Sung-ho. He was a prosecutor. His career ended badly about 10 years ago. Financial scandal. She watched him carefully. Your business entities were connected to the case he was building. Silence stretched between them. I've spent a long time wondering who destroyed him, Ms. Park continued, her voice steady but tight. Who planted that evidence? Who leaked those stories? Who killed him without ever touching him? Jite could end this conversation, walk out, have her removed from the school by morning. Instead, he said, "What do you want to know? Did you do it?" He met her eyes. Yes. Miss Park's breath caught. She'd suspected, clearly, but hearing it confirmed was different. Her hands gripped the edge of her chair. Why are you telling me this? Because you asked. That's not... She stopped, visibly steadying herself. You destroyed my father. You took everything from him. And now I'm teaching your son? Yes. Does Hajun know what you are? No. Will you tell him? When he's old enough. And what will you tell him? That his father ruins people? That you built your empire on breaking good men? Jite had no answer for that. Ms. Park stood abruptly. I should hate you. You should. But Hajun, her voice cracked. He loves you. I see it every day. He waits by the door for you. He lights up when you arrive. He draws you over and over, hoping you'll stay. Jite stood as well, slowly. I know. Do you? Ms. Park's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Because from where I'm standing, you're doing to him exactly what you did to my father. You're taking something precious and slowly destroying it. The words hit harder than any threat. I'm not quitting, she said firmly. I'm staying, for Hajun. But you need to know, I will never forget what you took from me. I wouldn't ask you to. She walked to the door, opened it. This meeting is over. Jite left without another word. In the parking lot, he sat in his car and didn't start the engine. His phone buzzed. Dr. Shin, Dorcas is asking for another visit. Can we schedule for this weekend? He typed back, yes. Then he sat in the silence and wondered what happened when all the things you'd buried finally clawed their way to the surface. Jite didn't go home that night. He drove aimlessly through Seoul, past the waterfront properties he controlled, the buildings that bore his corporate fingerprints, the neighborhoods where his influence ran deeper than any elected officials, his empire, built on calculation and ruthlessness, and the systematic elimination of anything soft. His father would have been proud. At 2 a.m., he found himself parked outside the facility where Dorcas was. The lights were low. Most patients would be sleeping. He wondered if she was, or if she lay awake like he did, haunted by choices that couldn't be undone. His phone rang. Min Jae, his oldest lieutenant. We have a problem. Jite closed his eyes. Tell me. The back syndicate is moving territory. They hit 2 of our distribution points tonight. No casualties, but it's a message. What kind of message? That they know you're distracted. Jite's jaw tightened. I'm not distracted. With respect, sir, you've declined 3 major deals in 2 weeks. You're leaving meetings early. The organization is noticing. Let them notice. Min Jae was quiet for a moment. Is this about the boy? Everything was about the boy now. Every choice Jitae made, every decision he couldn't explain, Hajun had become the center of gravity, pulling everything else into orbit around him. Handle the back situation, Jitae said. Standard protocols. And the deals you declined? Stay declined. He hung up. His father's voice filled the silence. You're going soft. Weak. I didn't raise you to let sentiment compromise the empire. But his father had raised him to be alone, to trust no one, to build walls so high that nothing could reach him. And Jitae had spent 30 decades perfecting that lesson, right up until a 3-year-old boy with brown skin and his mother's eyes had reached up in the dark and asked to be held. The next morning, Jitae did something he'd never done before. He took the day off. No meetings, no calls, no empire management. He sent a single message to his assistant, "Clear my schedule." At 7 a.m., he walked into Hajun's room. The boy was still asleep, curled around his bear. Jitae sat on the edge of the bed and waited. Hajun's eyes opened slowly. When he saw his father, confusion crossed his face. "Appa? Are you sick?" "No." "Then why are you here? It's morning." "I know." Jitae's throat felt tight. "I thought we could spend the day together." Hajun sat up, fully awake now, eyes wide. "Really? Really? Just us?" "Just us." Hajun's smile could have lit the entire city. "Can we go to the park and get ice cream and maybe see the ducks?" Jitae had negotiated multi-million-dollar deals, had stared down prosecutors and rival syndicates, had orchestrated the destruction of men who threatened his interests. But saying yes to his son's simple request felt like the hardest thing he'd ever done, because it meant stepping outside the fortress he'd built. It meant being visible, vulnerable. It meant his father had been wrong. "Yes," Jitae said. "We can do all of that." They spent the day doing ordinary things. The park, ice cream that dripped on Hajun's shirt, feeding ducks stale bread. Hajun talked constantly about school, about Teacher Park, about the drawing he was making for Amma's next visit. Jitae mostly listened, but when Hajun grabbed his hand while they walked, he didn't pull away. At one point, sitting on a bench while Hajun chased pigeons, Jitae's phone buzzed. Min-jae. Beck's syndicate sent another message. They mentioned the boy by name. Jitae stared at the text. There it was, the thing his father had always warned him about. Love something, and your enemies will use it against you. Care about someone, and they become a weapon pointed at your heart. Hajun ran back, breathless and happy. "Appa, did you see? I almost caught one." Jitae looked at his son, at the joy in his face, at the trust that said Jitae was someone worth running back to. He made a choice. He deleted Min-jae's message without responding. Whatever was coming, he'd face it. But not today. Today belonged to Hajun. "I saw," Jitae said. "You were very fast." That night, after Hajun fell asleep, Jitae sat in his office and opened his laptop. He pulled up the encrypted file he'd been avoiding for weeks. A complete dossier on everyone who'd ever been hurt by his rise to power. Prosecutor Park, the families displaced by his developments, the businesses crushed by his expansion. The list was long. He began methodically to plan reparations, anonymous donations, restored reputations, quiet reversals of damage done. It wouldn't erase what he'd done. It wouldn't bring back the dead or heal the broken, but it was something. His phone buzzed one more time, an encrypted message. Unknown sender. "We see you changing. We see the weakness. We will exploit it. Soon." Jitae stared at the threat. Then he looked at Hajun's drawing on his desk. 3 people holding hands. And he realized his father had been right about one thing. Love did make you vulnerable, but vulnerability wasn't the same as weakness, and he would burn his entire empire to the ground before he let anyone touch his son. Ji-tae had spent his entire life learning one lesson: never let anyone close enough to hurt you. But Ha-jun had reached for him in the dark, and everything his father taught him began to crack. Now, the empire he built on coldness and control is under threat, not from rival syndicates or federal prosecutors, but from something far more dangerous: the possibility that he might actually become the father his son believes he is. Miss Park knows the truth about what he did to her father, but she's staying for Ha-jun. Dorcas is healing, asking questions Ji-tae doesn't know how to answer, questions about why she broke, about who broke her. And somewhere in the shadows, an enemy is watching, waiting, seeing his vulnerability, preparing to strike at the one thing Kwon Ji-tae has finally allowed himself to love. The most dangerous man in Seoul just discovered that caring about someone doesn't make you weak, it makes you a target. If you were in Miss Park's position, teaching the child of the man who destroyed your father, what would you do? Would you walk away to protect yourself? Stay and make him face what he did every single day? Use the opportunity to get revenge? Or something else entirely? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one, and your perspectives shape where this story goes next. Subscribe and join the membership. If you're hooked on Ji-tae and Ha-jun's story, hit that subscribe button, because Part 2 is going to break your heart and put it back together in ways you won't see coming. Become a member and get access to early Part 2 chapters before they go public, exclusive bonus scenes, including Dorcas's first days in the facility and the night Ji-tae's father died, character deep dives exploring what makes Ji-tae, Dorcas, and Miss Park tick, behind-the-scenes commentary on the themes of generational trauma, interracial family dynamics, and breaking cycles. Members-only polls where you decide key story moments. Does Dorcas forgive him? Does Miss Park tell Ha-jun the truth? You vote. Live Q&A sessions where we discuss the hardest questions this story asks. This isn't just a story, it's a journey, and I want you in it with me. Subscribe now, become a member, and let's find out together if a man who was taught to be stone can learn to be human. Do you think Ji-tae deserves a second chance, or has he already done too much damage? Tell me what you think. I'll see you in Part 2. Silent Speak Stories, where every story leaves a mark.